Late January 2026. The atmosphere inside the Bernabéu wasn't just tense, it was hostile. The whistles were deafening, raining down from the stands like jagged glass, directed squarely at one man.
The fans whistling at you, you absolutely 100% deserved it. And the only way you get them off your back is by A, producing on the field and behaving properly.
Vinícius Jr stood isolated on the left touchline, the face of a catastrophic 17-game goal drought that had stretched from October 4th, 2025 all the way to January 11th, 2026. The media narrative was absolute and unforgiving. Finished, distracted, a shadow of himself.
2025, you've not been great. You've got 12 goals in 2025. 12 goals this whole calendar year. And speaking of 12, the last 12 games for Real Madrid, you haven't scored a single goal. You haven't scored a single goal for Real Madrid this season. In the last 12 games.
They were writing his career obituary live on air, but they weren't watching closely enough. That silence wasn't the end, it was the fuse. Because the 17-game drought is dead, replaced by a player who isn't just back, he is actively hunting down every critic who doubted him. To understand the violence of his current resurgence, you have to respect the brutality of the collapse. A 17-game drought for a regular winger is a bad season. For a Real Madrid number 7 and a Ballon d'Or contender, it is a crisis that threatens to end your career. The Spanish media didn't just report on the lack of goals, they weaponized it. They smelled blood in the water. Every missed dribble was analyzed as a character flaw. Every frustrated gesture was presented as proof that he wasn't captain material. They called him a crybaby.
There's a reason why they're all booing him and getting on him, because of the way he acts, the way he is, the way he has carried himself. He's brought every single bit of it on himself. I know everybody's like, oh, give him a bit of love. Oh. No, away you go, grow up. Be as great a player as you are.
The environment post-Xabi Alonso was toxic. The Redbeard revolution had failed, ending in a fractured dressing room and a confusing tactical system that left Vinicius stranded on an island. He was overworked defensively, tracking back constantly to cover defensive holes, leaving him gassed and blunt when it was time to attack. And it got worse. With Jude Bellingham and Kylian Mbappe sidelined by long-term injuries, the Galactico shield was stripped away. There was nowhere to hide. The criticism became personal. Fans and pundits claimed his attitude was the rot at the core of the club. They argued he couldn't lead without his superstar partners, that he was a luxury player who crumbled when the weight of the badge fell solely on his shoulders. They said the magic was gone, exposed as a fraud the moment he had to carry the team alone. This was the leadership vacuum. For 3 months, Vinicius buckled. He forced plays, dribbled into triple teams, and let his frustration boil over into arguments with referees. The rock bottom came with the humiliation in the Copa del Rey against Albacete, a 3-2 loss where Vini looked completely lost. The world laughed. They called him broken. Real Madrid new head coach, Alvaro Arbeloa, was labeled a yes man. He wasn't the tactical genius the pundits wanted. He was a gamble. He looked at Vinicius and didn't see a tactical problem. He saw a psychological cage. Arbeloa understood that you don't fix a player like Vini with drills, you fix him with trust. While the media mocked the appointment, seeing Arbeloa as a desperate measure who would fail, he was quietly preparing to remove the shackles. He knew Vini's problem wasn't ability, it was freedom, and he was about to let the monster out of the cage. The shift didn't happen gradually, it happened overnight. In early February 2026, Alvaro Arbeloa walked into the dressing room and effectively tore up the complex, high-intellect playbook that Xabi Alonso had left behind. The media expected a novice struggling to manage egos. What they got was a tactical simplification that looked genius because it understood one fundamental truth: Vinícius Jr cannot be a defender.
True. But what I liked about Real Madrid is I saw, and maybe just the Arbeloa effect, shouting him. I saw people working hard.
Under the previous regime, the Brazilian was tracking back into his own defensive third, covering for overlapping fullbacks and initiating the press from deep. By the time he received the ball, his legs were heavy and his mind was clouded by defensive responsibility. Arbeloa changed the shape immediately. He installed a compact, rigid 4-4-2 defensive block. On paper, it looked conservative. In reality, it was a launchpad. In this system, Vinicius was absolved of defensive tracking. He was told to stay high, stay wide, and wait.
If I'm seeing it correctly, when you play football this way, what it's going to do is allow way more matchups that favor Vinícius Jr. In my opinion, over the last year and a half of watching Vinícius Jr., in my opinion, he's not that great against teams that are parking the bus and then having two or being double teamed. If you can get him on transition football and you can get him at the pace of the game going quicker and you can get him on the run, I think that favors, I really think that favors Vinícius Jr.
Arbeloa introduced the death zone trigger. Instead of the chaotic, heavy metal pressing that had left the squad exhausted by January, Madrid began to wait. They allowed the opposition to hold the ball in harmless areas, but the moment the ball entered the central death zone or a centre-back played a negative pass, the trap snapped shut. The midfield four would collapse on the ball, win it back, and immediately look for the outlet. And the outlet was always Vinicius, resting on the halfway line, fully energized against a scrambling defense.
And again, I might see the game very different than you guys. I saw the game a very much like, hey, we don't have to have the ball all the time, but when we get the ball back, we're gonna fly off of this. The build up, I guess that's how I want to say it. I guess I'm using the word counterattack wrong. The build-up from Madrid was much faster now. It was a, hey, let's get the ball and let's get to that side as quickly as possible.
The proof of concept arrived on February 1st against Rayo Vallecano. The old Vinicius, the one from the drought, would have overthought the chance that fell to him. It was a .12 expected goal situation, a low percentage angle with bodies in the way. A month prior, he passes that ball or dribbles into a dead end. This time, he buried it. He didn't just score, he snapped the shot with a violence that suggested he was angry at the ball itself. That goal wasn't just a statistic, it was the green light. Arbeloa had told him to ignore the tactical shape in the final third, to play with the instincts of a street footballer, and that .12 XG finish was the first dividend. Then came the demolition. Valentine's Day, February 14th, against Real Sociedad. If the Rayo match was the spark, this was the forest fire. Real Madrid won 4-1, and Vinicius played like a man possessed. He scored twice, but the goals were secondary to the terror he inflicted. In just 2 weeks, his dribble success rate had doubled from a dismal 25% to an imperious 50%. He wasn't running into walls anymore, he was ghosting through them. The most telling metric from that night was his gravity. The data showed that whenever Vinicius received the ball, Sociedad committed 3 players to him instantly. It didn't work. He forced over 6 fouls in dangerous areas and generated 1.5 plus XG purely through aggressive box entry. He was winning penalties just by existing in the area. Arbeloa's rotation mechanics amplified this. He had Vinicius dropping deep into the half spaces, dragging the right back with him. This movement vacated the flank, allowing Alvaro and Eduardo Camavinga to sprint into the open space. It was vertical, direct, and devastating. Everything the previous system had failed to be. 3 days later, the scene shifted to Lisbon. February 17th, the Champions League playoff. This was the true test. La Liga dominance is one thing, a hostile European night away from home is another. The stakes were already suffocating, but the context made them worst. Jude Bellingham was still out, Rodrigo was missing, the Galactico safety net was gone. It was Vinicius and an unfit Kylian Mbappe against the Estadio de Luz. The atmosphere was poisonous from the warm-up. The Benfica faithful knew that Vinicius was the only threat, and they decided to break him before a ball was kicked. The noise was deafening. A mixture of whistles and insults raining down every time he touched the grass. For the first half, it was a gridlock. Benfica had parked the bus, daring Madrid to break them down. But in the 50th minute, the moment arrived. Vinicius received the ball on the edge of the box. There was no clear opening. The XG on the shot he was about to make was minimal. It didn't matter. He cut inside, ignoring the overlapping run, and curled a shot with such vicious precision that the goalkeeper didn't even dive until the ball was already nesting in the side netting. The silence that fell over the stadium was instant. And then, the dance. He ran to the corner flag, facing the very stand that had been abusing him for 50 minutes. And he danced. It wasn't a celebration of joy, it was a statement of dominance. It was a message that said, you cannot shout loud enough to stop this. But that expression of joy triggered something ugly. The referee, bafflingly, showed him a yellow card for the celebration. The crowd's hostility spiked, morphing from competitive jeering into something darker. Then came the Cristiani incident. As the game was about to restart, the Benfica winger clashed with Vinicius. Words were exchanged, and reports suggested racial slurs were used. We've seen this movie before.
He was yellow carded. Then what you saw was Benfica player Gianluca Cristiani covering his mouth with his shirt and allegedly racially abusing Vini Jr. That sparked angry scenes on the pitch and a big delay ultimately in the game.
We've seen Vinicius unravel when the provocation turns into abuse. The narration was ready to be written, but the collapse never came. Instead, we saw a coldness that we hadn't seen since the 2024 season. He didn't argue with the crowd anymore, he simply refocused. That goal wasn't just a dagger, it was a shield. He'd walked into a hostile foreign stadium without his superstar partners, faced abuse, and single-handedly decided the outcome. The numbers from this run are staggering. In just 6 games under Arbeloa, Vinicius has racked up 8 goal contributions. The team has won 8 straight matches, but the stat that truly matters is this. Vinicius now leads all players in Europe's top 5 leagues in progressive runs with 87. He isn't just scoring, he's carrying the entire offensive output of the biggest club in the world up the pitch, yard by grueling yard. He silenced the Bernabéu's whistles, he silenced the Benfica ultras, and now the only sound left is the terrifying rhythm of a player who's remembered exactly who he is. This isn't just a return to form, it is a hardening of his character. The stat proves his dominance, but the eye test proves his leadership. With the league top spot reclaimed and the Champions League run alive, the question isn't if Vini is back, but who can stop a player fueled by this much vengeance. If you want to witness the next chapter of this ruthless redemption story, make sure you subscribe right now.